All right, volatile stock trading marking recent sessions as investors assess news out of Europe as well as U.S. economic data. Joining us now, a squawk master of the market, Marc Faber, editor and publisher of the Gloom, Boom and Doom Report. Where are you, Marc? I didn't see it. It didn't say you in London, Hong Kong. Where
no, I'm in Montreal.
Montreal. Wow, you're right up the. Okay, fantastic.
Road.
With my chums. With my chums.
Chums. Friends?
Chums.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And ma blonde.
I don't want to know. My blonde.
No, it's a very funny expression. Here in Quebec, whether you have a girlfriend who has dark hair or blonde hair, or whether it's your wife or you, whatever she is, it's ma blonde.
Okay, perfect. And we don't want to know anything else
about girlfriends last time.
Yeah, he did.
On, yeah.
Marc he lives in Thailand half the time. Anyway, hey, Marc, yes. One of the things that you said recently is that this volatility is going to continue, although you're not necessarily saying it's going to be biased to the downside. It's just going to stay volatile. But the one thing you're pretty sure of is that the dollar will continue to be a good trade as far as on the long side. Why?
Yes. Well, I think the volatility arises because we had the NASDAQ bubble, and then we had the housing bubble and the stock market bubble, and then a commodities bubble. And usually when the bubble bursts, like after 29 or after the late 60s, you have a period of very high volatility for about 10 to 15 years before the markets settle down and then reignite the uptrend. And as far as the dollar is concerned, the reason I'm actually quite positive is that global liquidity, despite of the fact that the ECB and the European governments will flood the market with liquidity to bail themselves out, that global liquidity is tightening. And whenever global liquidity is tightening, it's bad for asset prices, but it's good for the US dollar, as was the case in 2008.
It's so compelling, a lot of stuff that you write and that you condense into, these little... let me just read this, one of the things you said. The problem I have with the investment universe is that I find it difficult to envision how the U.S. and Western Europe can return to healthy, sustainable growth without a complete purge of the financial system and some type of catalytic, at least it isn't catalytic.
Yes.
Something that restores some measure of social cohesion among people. And I'm thinking about, all what we're seeing and around the world, really, and what is now happening in the United States. You say it could be hyperinflation, a complete credit market collapse with widespread sovereign defaults, civil strife, a major military confrontation. None of these things are good, but you basically are positing that so much debt has been built up everywhere that there's no good way out of this.
Well, my view is, and you just heard the interview of the gentleman before, basically we have the Keynesians and we have the Democrats, and I'm not saying all Democrats are equal, but they want interventions, and we had far too many interventions in the Western world, where the share of the total economy that goes to government and is government-sponsored has grown. And that essentially makes it very difficult for the Western world to grow substantially. Add to that the huge level of debts. I don't see how the Western world, including the US, Japan, and Western Europe, can actually grow. They're going to stagnate. And when you have stagnation over a longer period of time, then people start to ask questions, and then they go after minorities. And Wall Street is a minority. They are a minority that anyone else would have done the same. They used the system, but they didn't create the system. The system was created by the lobbyists and by Washington. So they should actually go to Washington and also occupy the Federal Reserve on the way.
All right. Well, look, let's assume all of that is true. What would you do about it? What should the U.S., just to take that as one example of a developed economy with too much debt and all the other things you said, So if we don't do the Obama plan, which it sounds like you don't want to do, what do we do?
Of course
How do we
not.
get out of 9% unemployment?
Well, I tell you what to do. I think a flat tax on everybody would be actually a good measure. And I think to reduce the regulatory environment in the US and create again an environment. We have expansionary fiscal policies. We have expansionary monetary policies, but we have restrictive regulatory policies. And it curtails any initiative by the small businessman and the large businessman. He doesn't employ and invest capital in the US. He does that in China or somewhere else in the world where the regulatory environment is more favorable. If you look at net investments in the US, it's gone down for the last 20 years and it's now negative. In other words, basically the capital stock of America is not being replenished, but it's being replenished somewhere else. And at the same time, the policies of the Keynesians have always encouraged spending. We're not going to get out of recession by saving. Spend, spend, spend. That is wrong. The lack of saving is the problem of the United States.
The other, and
What
before,
I tell you,
go ahead, Mark. Yeah, you just keep going.
I tell you what the U.S. needs. The U.S. needs a Lee Kuan Yew who stands in front of the U.S. and tells them, listen, you lazy bugger. Now you have to tighten your belts. You have to save more. You have to work more for lower salaries. And only through that we will get out of the current dilemma that essentially prevents the economy from growing.
Well, that's essentially what David Cameron is saying in the United Kingdom. It doesn't seem to be working too well so far.
Yes, because nobody wants to work in the UK.
And if something because you haven't played yet, but Mark, also you also believe that the rich here are coddled, and the rich are coddled because the government needs politicians need funding to get reelected, and they also need transfer payments and redistribution to get the rest of the people on board. I mean, this
is the captured government idea, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so the protesters are on to something in your view there, Mark, in terms of government not being for the people, but for maybe for the rich or for the corporation.
Well, not necessarily for the corporations, for themselves. The problem is governments in the Western world, and I'm not singling out the US, they have grown like a cancer. And now they protect themselves to stay in power. And they essentially have a variety of alliances. Like, for instance, Mr. Obama, he has no clue. But when he sees the protesters in Wall Street, he immediately says, yes, 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 that's a good idea, because he can target the minority, so he can buy a few more votes. And of course, the well-to-do people, they also want to protect what they've worked for and also what they're paying for. Because as you know, in the US, roughly 50% of the people don't pay any federal income tax. So actually to say that the rich have not contributed anything is actually wrong.
Mark. Right.
There are some well-to-do people
Mark,
that have not.
Thank you, Mark. You're playing the music. We got to go. It's always great to have you on.
Yes, thank you.